say something about all universal teams being being the Maple Leafs, or something about the Rangers and them only being hockey. Well, you can go in and combine multiple statements together. So you could string across multiple or statements. You could string across multiple if statements. And I love the breakdown here. Make things a lot easier.
You mean the breaking it over multiple lines?
Yeah.
Yeah, and of course, remembering if you do that, you have to put that backslash to say I'm continuing this if statement on the next line.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I did that there, so it's a little easier to read.
Exactly. Now,
this is the one, I have done this one on production. This is a mistake, I'll be honest, there is a mistake here, and I have made this mistake on production code, and it's gone live. Not with the beaver and the moose, but the idea of I had a combination of and or statements, and the end results weren't quite what I expected, and I have seen this happen in code that was live, and it took us a couple of months to figure out what we'd done wrong. So I'll let you walk through this little, or I can walk through it if you like, but go for it.
Okay, so here's what we got. So you're going to notice we've got an and, we've got an or. Now, just like we saw previously, we can have them both.
Absolutely, you can have ands and ors mixed together. It's perfectly legit.
Now, I want to kind of go back and point out earlier on that I was telling the story in my math class, logic, and talked about, and or, both sides have to be true or otherwise. Here's the other thing that I want to point out. This was in math class. Now, the reason that I'm pointing out math class here is because, just like in math, there is a set of precedents here that ands and ors do have precedents.
Just like math.
Yes.
Multiplication and division are done first in math, then addition, subtraction.
Yep.
Well, guess what? Ands and ors, it does the and statements, it'll do all the and statements, and after doing all the and statements, then it'll go and do all the or statements.
Exactly, and in fact, here, you're going to notice that one doesn't work the way that you might expect it. Because what you're going to notice is that it's going to say, well, we put in beaver, and we put in Vietnam as the country, so you might be expecting that because of the fact that that's what we typed in, what you might be expecting is, well, or pet equals beaver. So that part right there is true. We have a true. That must mean the entire thing is true, right?
Yep.
Not quite. Not quite. Because what's happening is that the and there is overriding everything. That it's that and first and then the or. And I'm actually going to skip right over here, again, that order of precedence, because I really want that little slide, because you kind of broke it down perfectly here, that you're going to notice up at the very top, that first part is what's going to run first, and then the second part. So if I'm looking to see if you live in Canada, or if you like a moose or a beaver, then what I'm going to do is then go in and do my check from there. And I think I said that wrong, so I'm going to try that.
Yeah, I was going to give that another try. It didn't come out quite right. And this is hard to follow. It actually may make more sense to read than to try and say out loud. But and I'll tell you the actual situation where I had this happen. It was a case where I had to say if it was a super youth, let's say it was a gold card member from the US or Canada, give them their free benefits. Mm-hmm. And the way what happened to me was if somebody wasn't a gold member, so they were only silver, and they were from USA, they were still getting the benefits. I'm like, whoa, wait a second. I said if they're a gold member and they're from the US or Canada, they get the benefits. That was the way I wrote my code. But for some reason, my silver member, who happened to be from the USA, was getting benefits. Because the and statement returned a false, but then I compared that false and said, or from USA, and they were from USA, so boom, they got the benefits.
So to bring that back to here, let's kind of break this down. So I'm going to actually go all the way back here to our initial spot, because you'll notice the line break here, and this is really what we're looking for here. So I'm just going to say erase all link, and let's kind of start this whole thing over. So here's what we're looking to do. I'm looking for two things. I want to make sure that you're in Canada. And if you're in Canada, I want to check to see if you like moose or beavers. If you like moose or if you like beaver, cool. we're going to go ahead and say, hey, do you play hockey as well? Because we're kind of assuming that, there's some level of stereotype.
We want to know. If you're a Canadian and you have a pet moose or beaver, man, you're a stereotypical Canadian. You must love your hockey team.
Absolutely.
So you're a Canadian and you either have a pet moose or beaver.
So what we're really looking for is this particular breakdown that we're looking, and I'm just going to fire back up my ink, we're really looking to test, first, are you in Canada? And only if you're in Canada do we care about your pet. If you're from some other country, such as Vietnam, we don't care.
Because we're not going to assume the stereotype that you play hockey if you're not from Canada.
Exactly.
That's a Canadian stereotype.
Exactly. So what's happening is this. Order of precedence is that it's running that and statement first. And if I kick back to this slide right here, because this breaks it down perfectly, it's running that part there first. And then it's running that part second. So in order for this to work, it's only going to test the way that we want it to work if you live in Canada, if you live in Canada, and if you have a moose.
Right.
But if you're the other combination, and this is the other one that we're looking for, that you live in Canada and you have a pet beaver,
then you're still good.
That's what we're looking for.
That's all
the
good.
desired
yeah,
result.
That's what I'm looking for. Canadians who have a moose or Canadians who have a beaver.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes. So that one's still good. So that one's good. That one's good. But if we go in and we say, for example, U.S., and then our, U.S. and our moose, there we go. Now I've got my logic. Let's talk about this. What's going to happen is it's going to be U.S. here. It's going to be moose here. What we're looking for, I only care if you're Canadian. If you're not Canadian, we don't want to ask you about hockey. What's going to happen is it's going to test that part right there. And that's going to test as false. And then, of course, it's going to come down to the pet and test as false as well, but that's sort of irrelevant. But it's going to test as false.
It's going to say country. It's going to give you a false for the country is not Canada with pet moose, but the pet is a beaver. So therefore, because the part of your OR statement is a true, if any part of an OR statement is true, it evaluates as true.
Right.
Yeah. And actually, you know what? We have somebody has guessed the answer on how to solve this.
Cool. Can I just close
carry
this off?
Carry it through.
All right. I just want to close this off,
Please do.
just because I'm trying to make sure there's no confusion here.
It's tough. It's a weird scenario, but yeah, go on.
Okay. So trying to make sure there's no confusion. So here's what we've got going on. So we want only if you're Canada, and then again, moose, beaver. So if we put together a scenario where you are in Canada and you had a pet beaver, here's what's going to happen. Is this part right here, you're in Canada, that's going to test as true. Mm-hmm. The second part here where it's going to test the moose, that is now going to test as false. And then our OR right here is going to test as false. So that result, false.
Right.
Not going to come out the way that we want it to come out. If I go in and I say Canada and I say moose, that's going to test as true. That is going to test as true. This sort of becomes irrelevant. It's going to test as false, but we've got a true. So that is going to come out as
true
over here.
Okay.
So what we want to make sure of is that if it turned out that you were in the U.S.,
okay,
but you had a beaver. So let's clear out my screen here. Let's go back in. U.S. beaver. We don't want this to test as true.
That is correct.
So we're going to go U.S. here. This part up here is going to test as false because that's not right.
Yep.
Then we're going to compare our beaver. That's going to test as true. Let's remember the OR statement is executing second. So what's going to happen? This is going to return as
true.
True. What did we want it to return as?
We wanted it to return false.
There we go.
Yeah.
There's the whole kind of come together of all of
Yeah, I said, and it's tricky because we've got 4 different scenarios, and 3 of the 4 scenarios are working, and the 4th scenario is not working. So yes, it's confusing to follow. Our apologies. Now the good news is fixing it. Wait till you see how easy it is.
Exactly. So this sort of goes back to when we were talking about math a while ago, that when in doubt, put parentheses around it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to clean up the prior code that I had here. and I'm going to put in one statement. And I'm going to say this in English. If the sport is hockey, and the team is the Senators or Leafs, display the cup message. So we're looking for two parts. Again, that first part is, want the sport to be hockey. The second part is, we want it to be the Senators or the Leafs. That's what we're looking for. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say if. And then I'm going to say if our sport is hockey and the team is the Rangers, oops, not the Rangers, the Senators, or the team equals the Leafs, and I'm doing this wrong the first time and I'm doing this on purpose, then print there we go. Good luck getting to the cup this year.
Okay.
All right.
That sounds good.
So again, what we're looking for is we want to make sure it's both hockey and it's the Leafs. So if I fire this back up, and I go in, and I'm going to go straight to the wrong case. So I'm going to say Leafs, and I'm going to say cricket. And I'm going to hit enter. You're going to notice it displayed the message. And that's not what we want. And the reason for that is that this and statement right here is overriding everything. That's our problem. So what we want to do is we want to surround it in parentheses. So now what we're doing is we're breaking this down into two separate statements. And now that part is going to be evaluated as one. That part is going to be evaluated as a second. And then our and is what's going to do the final test there. So now let me go in, hit start, enter my favorite hockey team. We'll go Leafs. I'm going to enter my favorite sport. I'm going to say cricket.
Yep.
Hit enter. Doesn't display anything. That's what we were looking for.
Woohoo! High five. Yes.
It doesn't display anything. Yes.
That's actually the output we wanted.
And then we'll go ahead and we'll do it again. And we'll go ahead and say hockey team is the Leafs. Our sport is hockey. We'll hit enter. And now it displays what we want. So the real takeaway that I want you to get from all of this, a couple of things. Number one, when in doubt, surround things with parentheses.
Yep.
Number two, when it comes to complex statements, break them down into smaller, bite-sized chunks to make your life that much easier. Because otherwise, this can get away from you very quickly, and dealing with logic errors can cause you to really develop a fair amount of gray hair. So be very careful about going through and doing all of this. Test everything, and again, make your code as simple as possible. You know, one of the things Susan was talking about earlier was the concept of just putting in flags. One great thing about flags, especially in a situation like this, is it can allow you to better break things down. So what I could do is maybe something like this, kind of just go in and rewrite it, and maybe something like this, is I say if the sport is hockey, and I'm going to say sport is hockey equals false. So if it turns out that it's hockey, then we'll go ahead and say sport is hockey equals true. And then we'll go in and say team is correct equals false, and then we'll say if team equals the Senators or the team equals the Leafs, then we'll go ahead and say team is correct equals true. And then now what I can do in my final if statement is now I can say if sport is hockey and team is correct, then we'll go ahead and display out our little error message.
Yeah. So those are some good tricks to try and avoid hitting these scenarios. But again, it comes down to test for different scenarios. Try every single possible combination. You've got to make sure that it operates as expected.
Absolutely.
So we've got parentheses we can use to solve the problem. We've got Boolean variables we can use to reduce the chance of hitting those situations.
Exactly.
So two great tools at our disposal.
Yep. So you'll notice that both of these blocks are the same. One of them is much longer than the other.
Yep.
The top one is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 lines of code as opposed to 2. Just because you have less lines of code doesn't necessarily mean that it's better code. Go with the one that's going to be the most readable. Don't be afraid to go in and break things down like that.
Yep.
Okay. Cool. And by the way, just to sort of prove the point, favorite team, Rangers, sport, let's use the right team, Christopher. Senators.
Getting into the day, typing skills diminishing.
Exactly.
We'll have to wrap up soon.
Hockey, enter. And so you'll notice that it's displaying out, good luck getting a cup this year, twice.
Because you have both your if statements are in there.
Exactly, both the if statements, and that proves that they are both doing the exact same thing. Let me go back in, hit start again, and let's go in and say Senators and cricket, and now we should notice it doesn't do anything.
Perfect.
So there's our little fringe case. So yeah, so again, whatever's going to make the most sense to you, and to go back to this one more time,
Do we have to? No, I don't mean it that way, Chris. I'm sorry whatsoever. It's a tough one. It's a long day. No, you've got two fantastic options for solutions there of solving the problem, and now you've proven you've got it working.
Yep.
When you enter the correct data, it's giving the right output.
Mm-hmm.
When you enter the scenario that was failing earlier, it's giving you the correct output.
Right.
And the last point you wanted to make?
Was just simply that, again, there's multiple ways to do the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Go with whatever is going to be the easiest
Absolutely.
for you. That's really it.
It's nice that you have both those solutions up there, because it's interesting. We're actually seeing some comments in the screen that they love your solution with the Boolean flags, and that suddenly people are like, oh, the light bulb's clicking, and I like that solution, so I can see that solution's really resonating with a lot of the people on there.
Excellent. I like that. All right, so last little thing then is nesting our if statements together. So again, things can get much more complex. So what you're going to notice here is that we can go ahead and break things down. So you'll notice if Monday, and then you'll also notice down below if not fresh coffee. So, kind of keeping in mind what would happen is it's first going to check to see if it's Monday, and if it is, then it would run this block of code and then do a secondary check. Now, one thing that you might be wondering is, well, wait a minute, couldn't you have just done an and statement here? Because in order for that little line of code right there to run, both Monday needs to be true and this needs to be false. So couldn't we have gone in and maybe just left that at fresh coffee and written that with an and statement and put it together? You probably could have done it that way, but the biggest thing is that we also want to print that out as well, that there's something else that we want to do if it turns out that it's Monday. So if it turns out that it's Monday, we want to print out I hate Mondays. If it turns out that it's Monday and we don't have fresh coffee, then that's when we want to do that. So you're going to notice that we need to do multiple things on that top if statement.
Yep.
So you can go in and tab in and nest your if statements. Now, we've already seen this. If statements can get away from you in a hurry.
Yep.
So be very careful how things are indented. Be very careful about how you document things, so that way you can better determine and better explain what it is that's going to happen. And in particular, to go with the tabbing part of things, if I had taken that little print and I tabbed that in, that would then only work if we didn't have fresh coffee and if it was Monday.
Yep.
Okay. So let's close all of this out with a demo here, and let me go in and do this. And I'm
You
going
can
to
see why practicing
keep
becomes
that.
so important. We talked about that in a couple of the modules, but it's essential to practice, and we've talked about how essential it is to test. And all these, different scenarios and combinations, it starts to get a bit confusing after a while, but it just reinforces that basic principle. You've got to try things, you've got to test things. So practice, practice, practice. Write different if statements, different combinations. So get used to, whoops, I forgot to indent, and finding that mistake when you forget to do the indenting. Those sorts of things are going to happen. So the more you practice, you will make mistakes, but the more you practice, the faster you're going to get at finding those mistakes.
Exactly. Yep,
Yeah.
That's exactly it. So what I'm doing here is I'm just kind of going back and creating one last little scenario here where, and let's just go in and do one last print statement. There we go. So what you're going to notice is if it's hockey, then we're going to print out go hockey. If it's Senators, good luck getting the cup. And then down at the very end, I'm going to say we do love hockey. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to play this and I'm going to type in Senators and I'm going to type in hockey and I'm going to hit enter. And you'll notice that it gives us all three because it's hockey and it's the Senators.
Right.
Okay. Now, the next little part there is I want to tab this in real quick just so we can see what happens with that tab in. And let's go in and let's say Rangers for our favorite team.
Yep.
Hockey for our favorite sport. And you'll notice it only says go hockey.
Yes.
Let's do this one more time. Let's go back here and let's just get rid of a tab. Mm-hmm. Let's go ahead and run this again. Let's go in and say Rangers again.
What
Let's
a difference the tab makes.
Hockey again. Exactly. And you'll notice that this time it actually printed out both go hockey and we do love hockey. It was all about that tab. So if I tab that in, now I hit start again. Rangers. I say hockey. And you'll notice that it's only displaying out go hockey. So you're going to notice there that that tab makes all the difference. And, a couple of people mentioned earlier when we were talking about if statements that those tabs are very subtle, and I'm with you, but trust me, while yes, it doesn't necessarily impact the syntax in other languages, it impacts the readability. And that's almost just as important, if not more so in a lot of cases, because if I can't look at code and figure out what it's doing, that's going to lead to even more problems. Awesome. All right, so.
Fantastic, Christopher. Holy smokes, man. You've had a tough module for the end of a day. I had to give you you had to have the most complex logic situation to deal with at the end of a long day. Well done.
Thank you. I'm glad we finally got to break that down there. Took a little work, but we got there. The challenge then. And I'm going to kind of let you guys read through this on your own. But the big thing that I want to point out, and this is very much a real world thing, is you're going to notice that what we're trying to do is give you a scenario that's real world. And if you're dealing with a lot of countries, and Canada is a great example, where you've got different general taxes for the country, you've got different provincial taxes, the way that they combine them together can be different and so forth. Here's your different scenarios. So if you're from one province, apply this tax. If you're from a different province, apply this. And all of that can be done with if statements. And again, up on the GitHub, we do have solutions for all of that.
And breathe. Ladies and gentlemen, you have learned so much today.
We've covered a decent amount of
how much
ground.
everybody's had a chance to learn.
Yeah.
And the cool thing is we do have some more fun stuff for you tomorrow. We're going to get into reading and writing to files. We're also going to get into loops and have a little fun doing that with a program that actually allows you to start drawing funky shapes on the screen. So we'll have some fun with that. So it'll give us a chance to do some fun new things tomorrow. Anything we need to do tonight before we wrap up?
Yeah, absolutely. There was one last poll question down there at the very bottom of the screen. If you want to go ahead and hit a choice on there, do want to thank everybody for sticking with us. It's been a lot of fun. We've been loving seeing all the
awesome.
different comments. Absolutely. And hopefully you guys have had a fair amount of fun. I know I had a blast. I'm going to assume that you had a blast.
It's been an absolute blast. Having a lot of fun.
Excellent, excellent. So with that, we've got a lot more to cover come tomorrow. So 9 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. Daylight time for still about another hour, or about another month. Come on back tomorrow morning. We'll pick it up. Day 2, learning to program with Python. Again, Susan Ibach. I'm Christopher Harrison. We will see you tomorrow morning. Thanks again for.
Can I just briefly ask you, do you remember off the top of your head the aka.ms URL for the GitHub for those people who wanted to go look at it? I know this is tough at the end of the day. And
intro Python code?
So
I'll look it up. I tell you what, I'll look it up. I'll put it into the chat window.
There we go. So because I had a couple people asking, hey, I remember you mentioned it was GitHub. What's list? We'll put that in the chat window before we leave.
Actually, wait a minute. Tell you what, I can do that. Yeah, it just dawned on me. I had it in a notepad. If Danny, you want to just take my screen?
Awesome. I had a feel. I knew you'd be organized. There we go.
There we go. Intro. Hey, if we rewind the tape, I said that correctly.
Well done. There we go. Awesome. Excellent.
All right. So there's the shortcut to all the GitHub code. We'll kind of push out all of our last changes here momentarily, so you'll have access to everything that we've done.
All the demos, solutions to the challenges, a reminder of what the challenges were, the PowerPoint decks, all that stuff, so you can review. And of course, later these will all be online recorded as well, so you can watch them, review them, watch them at your own pace, and so on.
Exactly.
Looking forward to seeing you tomorrow.
We'll see you guys tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Pacific time. Can't wait. All right. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good night. Welcome back to those of you who were here yesterday. For those of you who missed us yesterday, we missed you.
Thank you. Yes, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for joining us this morning. This is day 2 of Introduction to Programming with Python. That is Susan Ibach. I am Christopher Harrison. And what we want to do is sort of reset the level, of, as it were. That we want to go back, introduce ourselves, because we know we've got a fair number of people that are kind of just joining us, kind of brand new, don't know our quirky sense of humor. Our little quirky brand of delivery here. So we want to make sure that we introduce ourselves. We want to talk about what it is that we're going to talk about, and then kind of launch on into it, because we certainly have a fair amount of content to try and
great content to get through today.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so Susan, right along those lines, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
So my name is Susan Ibach, and I'm a technical evangelist based out of Microsoft Canada. My Twitter handle is HockeyGeekGirl, and I've been programming for a number of years. I'm not going to admit to exactly how many years of coding experience, but as I was making the joke yesterday, it's remarkable how many years experience I have, given that I'm only 29.
Only 29?
Yeah, I'm celebrating my several anniversaries of that 29th birthday now.
We won't ask how many.
And so I spent a lot of time coding. I love exploring the world of code and having fun with it, and looking forward to sharing it with you guys today, and hoping that you guys will have some fun with it too.
Yeah, excellent. I'm, of course, Christopher Harrison. My Twitter handle is Geek Trainer, which really kind of tells you everything about my professional career that you might ever need to know. On a personal basis, I started off with the Commodore 64, picked up my copy of Byte magazine, punched in the programs from there.
I remember getting those books and typing in the programs in the books. Yes, that's how we started. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, and it is those little things, just getting in there, kind of breaking things. That really is the way that you want to learn to do code. On a personal basis, I have a 4-legged child and a periodic marathoner when I'm not, battling yet another injury. I would also like to point out, since this is day 2, Susan and I both decided to get a little bit more casual this morning.
We're more coders, today. This is more what you wear when you're coding. Get comfortable, settle in, and start coding. So that's just it. Now we're really ready to settle in and do some coding.
Exactly. Now, real quick, if you take a look at the slide, you're going to notice this was everything from day 1.
Which it was all recorded, and it will all be posted and available in a couple of weeks.
You'll
get an email and notification when the recording's available. So if you missed any of the content yesterday, yes, you'll have a chance to go back, look at that. And we have this awesome, on GitHub, we also have available the slide decks, the demos we've done in terms of the code. We have challenges for you at the end of each module. The challenges are on that GitHub location, and even the solutions to the challenges, which you can use if you need a little help.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah, that bottom code right there, that's going to get you to everything that Susan was just talking about, all those little sample files. And one of the things that you're going to notice is we'll do our demos live, which of course means things will break.
Yep.
That's what happened. But we will be putting everything up onto that GitHub location, and you can access that with the bottom URL. This top URL, the reason that I threw that back up there is that's the shortcut URL that you can use to get to the presentation today. But what's cool about that shortcut is that once all of this becomes available on demand, which will be in about 2 weeks, that URL will be updated. So you will get the email, and that's really the best way to know that now all of this is live. So you'll get that email, but if you maybe lost your email, or if maybe the email that the site has for you is different than the one that you usually use, you can go ahead and use that URL. And that's always the one that I point people at.
So that works for the live event, and it will also get you access to the recordings once those are available.
Exactly.
So one URL for live, or just to watch us over and over again.
That's exactly it. Yeah, you know.
But all joking aside, actually, when you're trying to learn how to code, there'll be